If you're listening to this, there's a pretty good chance that you are an indie podcaster, as in you don't have the full weight of a major podcasting publisher helping you market your show and get it in the right ears of the right audience. So I've got a question for you as said indie podcaster. If you're putting out consistent episodes and the growth still feels slow, what's actually going wrong? Well, according to new research from Signal Hill Insights in a study called Podcast Atlas, which surveyed 5,000 plus listeners, we've got a pretty good answer to this, and sounds profitable. And the legend that is Tom Webster delivered that clear answer to us in a recent webinar. And it was my job to watch it for you, which is what I've done. And that's what this episode is about. And your episode, it turns out, is doing one job in a system that needs 4 or 5 things working together in order to grow. Today, we're going to talk about 3 of those things and what to do about them. Hello, you're listening to Podmastery Podcasting Insights. I'm Neal, founder of Podknows Podcasting, 25 years in radio and audio. And for the last several of those, I've been working with independent podcasters like you on the gap between a show that sounds technically right and one that actually does something for the people listening. Well, first of all, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what's in this study and my take on it, I want to just preface it by telling you, every time some market research or a study comes out, it should be treated thusly. It's one piece of market research. It doesn't mean its findings should lead to you overhauling how you do everything. Okay? And I have been quite vocal in the past about the lack of efficacy that podcast clips can have for growing your podcast. Now, I'm going to maintain that throughout this entire episode. All right? It's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm really not. I am maintaining podcast clips on social media are probably not going to grow your audience in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now that I've got that out of the way, let's talk about the best stat in this whole study. 77% of audio podcast listeners give it their full or near full attention. Only 5% treat it as background noise, and 43% trust their favorite podcast host as much as they would a friend. Now that's incredible, and no other platform comes even close to those numbers. Can you imagine 43% of your LinkedIn followers trusting you as much as a friend? But here's the bit that most indie podcasters are going to miss with this study, even if they looked at it. That trust only kicks in once somebody is already listening. And audio is the deepest relationship builder in the whole ecosystem. But, and here's where the study comes in, it's not how people are finding you in the first place. If you've been expecting your audio episodes to do the discovery work as well as the trust work, that, they say, is the problem, because those are 2 different jobs, and audio is only built for one of them, for the trust piece. And here we come on to the bit that could be slightly contentious, depending on your viewpoint. Clips are apparently how people actually find you. And I will say the numbers are quite hard to argue with. Okay, so 89% of podcast listeners watch clips on social media. That is the finding of this survey of 5,000 plus listeners. 81% say clips have led them to watch a specific episode at least sometimes, and 84% say clips have turned them into a regular listener of a show. On paper, that means it's not a nice to have, it's the whole discovery pipeline, clips. Now, most indie podcasters either don't clip at all or do it occasionally and infrequently. We just don't have the time. We're busy. We're making this content in the first place. We certainly don't have an extra hour or 2 every week to sit down and find exceptional bits of content that would do well on a social media platform. But the truth is, according to this research, again, I am making that clear, this research, well, your potential audience is scrolling YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and not finding you because there's nothing of you to find. So the honest question worth asking yourself is this: when did you last clip something from your show and put it somewhere that people who don't already listen to you might actually find it? Because if the answer is rarely or never, then according to this, you might be switching off the top of your funnel. One more thing from the data that's worth flagging. For younger audiences specifically, vertical video isn't just a discovery channel, it is the discovery channel. It's where they're living. The podcast apps come way later, once somebody already knows you exist. Let's make it quite clear though, every channel we've just talked about, so that's Spotify, that's Apple, that's YouTube, that's Instagram, TikTok, all of that is rented land. Apple Podcasts is rented land. Your RSS feed is what you own. So the algorithm changes, the platform pivots, your account gets suspended. It's happened to people, and it'll keep happening. So if Apple Podcasts decides to reject your RSS feed, which we know has happened to big names in the past, Alex Jones being one of them, well, that's end of the road, isn't it? Unless you want to start from scratch, the moment that your RSS feed gets booted out of any platform, doesn't matter how much you own that RSS feed, you cannot access that rented land. The newsletter is different. It's yours. It's like your RSS feed. There is no algorithm sitting between you and your listener, and the data is backing this up. 87% of podcast listeners who subscribe to a newsletter say it's led them back to a podcast episode at least sometimes. Only 39% of podcast listeners subscribe to any newsletter at all. So that means 61% are sitting there as an untapped, ownable audience waiting to be converted. And for indie creators especially, building that email list alongside your show isn't optional. It is the insurance policy you now have against everything else not doing its job. Now I'm going to maintain once again, newsletter, absolutely. RSS feed, must. Podcast clips are nice to have. If your sole purpose is to grow your audio podcast. Because the clips are not going to do that. At least not directly. Even the survey findings back that point up. Most people are finding shows in other places and then looking in the podcast apps once they've made that connection. If you want to grow a YouTube channel that happens to have that podcast content duplicated into it, great, have at it. The clips will help. That's what YouTube Shorts were invented for. That's what TikTok does as its job. But remove the audio as the goal from this. So there we are, 3 jobs. Audio does the trust work once someone's listening. Clips, according to this, do the discovery work before they're even listening. And the newsletter keeps the relationship yours regardless of what the platforms decide to do. You don't need to do all of this at once. But if you're only doing one of them and wondering why your growth is slower than you'd like, well, this is food for thought, isn't it? You can go check out the full Podcast Atlas report. It's free, it's well worth a read, and you'll find the link to it in the episode description. I hope you found this episode useful. If you did, share it with another podcaster you know is always interested in podcasting insights. In the meantime, until the next episode, good luck with your continuing journey to attaining pod mastery.